The straight razor carved through flesh with surgical precision. Once, twice, 7 times total before the mathematics of murder seemed complete. March 11, 1945. Sing Sing Correctional Facility, D Block, Cell Corridor 7. 2:17 p.m. precisely. Bumpy Johnson's spine met stone wall with the finality of a closing casket. The air carried competing scents, institutional floor wax, metallic blood, and the acrid sweat of executioners completing their assignment. 3 silhouettes stood in formation above the fallen king. Tony, the blade Marquez, held the weapon, a straight razor that had traveled from Harlem barbershops to maximum security, its edge maintained with religious devotion. Beside him, Vincent Callo, 240 pounds of sanctioned violence, and Sal Romano, the accountant of pain. Their prison uniforms hung with the tailored precision of men who refused to surrender dignity even behind bars. 7 penetrations. Abdomen, chest, back, both lungs. Each strike was calculated, deliberate, designed to shut down biological function within a predictable time frame. The corridor transformed into a cathedral of silence, 60 inmates watching from cells, their breathing suspended, witnesses to the execution of royalty. Blood expanded outward in geometric patterns across gray concrete, dark and rhythmic, each pulse carrying away pieces of what made Bumpy Johnson legendary. His breathing came shallow, wet, the sound of compromised lungs fighting against inevitable collapse. Tony descended to one knee, professional and intimate. The cold barrel of a smuggled .38 pressed against Bumpy's bruised ribs, insurance policy, confirmation of dominance. His whisper carried the weight of institutional authority. Luciano sends his regards. Harlem operates under new management effective immediately. The 3 Italians departed in synchronized formation, their laughter echoing through D Block like a victory anthem. Behind them, a king lay dying on institutional concrete, his empire seemingly concluded by simple arithmetic. 7 wounds divided by 1 man equals 0 future. They had 72 hours to learn that Bumpy Johnson calculated in different mathematics entirely. Before the 3rd sunrise, they wouldn't be concerned with Harlem territories or street revenue. They would be begging for the death they failed to deliver, understanding too late that leaving an enemy breathing is leaving an equation unsolved. And unsolved equations always balance themselves. This is the true story of the most brutal revenge in prison history. And if you think you know how this ends, you don't. Stay until the end, because what Bumpy did to these men was worse than death itself. But first, hit that subscribe button, because we're diving into the darkest corners of criminal history, and you don't want to miss what's coming next. The blade entered at calculated intervals. March 11th, 1945, 2:17 p.m., Sing Sing Correctional Facility, D Block. Bumpy Johnson's body met concrete with the sound of finality. Blood expanded outward in geometric patterns, dark and deliberate against gray stone. 3 men stood in formation above him. Tony, the blade Marquez, Vincent Callo, Sal Romano. Professional executioners with professional credentials. 7 penetration wounds, 3 abdominal, 2 thoracic, 2 pulmonary. Each strike placed with anatomical precision, designed to terminate biological function within a predictable time frame. Tony leaned close, his whisper a declaration of territorial acquisition. Harlem's ours now. The statement hung in the air like a mathematical proof, seemingly irrefutable. The 3 Italians departed in synchronized formation, their footsteps echoing satisfaction down the cell block corridor. Behind them, Bumpy Johnson lay in expanding crimson, his respiratory system compromised, his cardiovascular integrity failing. Dr. Samuel Reinhardt arrived at 2:23 p.m., 6 minutes post-incident. His examination was brief, his prognosis clinical. 6 hours maximum, he informed the guards, shaking his head with professional certainty. But in the dying man's eyes, something calculated differently. Bumpy Johnson's internal clock operated on an entirely separate timeline, one his executioners had failed to account for in their lethal mathematics. Tony, the blade Marquez, carried credentials that commanded respect in Sing Sing's hierarchy. A made man in the Luciano family, his position represented institutional authority within the prison's shadow economy. His reputation wasn't built on rumor but on documented eliminations, each one executed with signature efficiency. Vincent Callo measured 6'3", 240 pounds of calculated violence. Former professional boxer with 7 hospitalizations attributed to his fists. His knuckles bore permanent damage from repeated impacts against human bone. Inside Sing Sing, he served as enforcement, the physical manifestation of consequences for those who challenged Italian control. Sal Romano operated the laundry operation, transforming mundane labor into systematic extortion. His network extracted weekly payments from inmates seeking clean clothing, creating revenue streams that financed the Italian power structure. Reliable, methodical, without unnecessary cruelty, but utterly without mercy when collection proved necessary. These weren't impulsive street criminals. They represented organized violence, each man a component in a larger machine of control. Their decision to eliminate Bumpy Johnson wasn't personal vendetta but strategic calculation. Harlem's representative inside Sing Sing threatened their territorial monopoly. 7 stabs represented their solution. A permanent answer to a temporary problem. They had performed the arithmetic, confirmed the variables, and executed their proof. What they failed to calculate was that kings don't die according to common mathematics. Hour 6. Dr. Reinhardt's deadline passed. Bumpy Johnson's chest continued rising and falling, defying medical prediction. The prison's whisper network transmitted this data point through cell blocks with the speed of electrical current. Hour 8. Tony the Blade received confirmation. The Harlem problem persisted, heart still pumping, lungs still processing oxygen. Tony dismissed this as temporary, biology's final protest before inevitable cessation. Hour 10. The Italian crew convened in the recreation yard. Contraband whiskey circulated among the 3 men, celebrating premature victory. Vincent laughed, demonstrating the punch combination that would have been his alternative method. Sal outlined how they'd divide Bumpy's previous territories and revenue streams. Hour 12. Bumpy Johnson's eyes opened. The morphine haze cleared, revealing consciousness behind pupils that shouldn't have been capable of focus. Guard Thompson witnessed this resurrection and immediately departed to notify the warden. The prison's atmosphere shifted. D-block inmates who had been planning their survival strategies in a post-Bumpy hierarchy now recalculated. The Italian celebration became hollow, their whiskey tasting suddenly uncertain. Hour 15. Word reached Tony. His expression transformed from satisfaction to something colder, recognition that he'd initiated a sequence of events without confirming its completion. In the infirmary bed, Bumpy lay motionless except for his eyes, which moved with purpose, already calculating the variables of his response equation. Hour 18. Bumpy Johnson didn't dispatch messages to organized crime networks or call favors from Harlem streets. His army existed within Sing Sing's walls, invisible to those who never thought to look at the men who swept floors and served food. For 18 months, Bumpy had operated with a different philosophy than other power brokers. He'd learned the names of porters, kitchen workers, laundry staff, men the Italian crew walked past without acknowledgement. When James the porter's daughter needed surgery, Bumpy's outside connections provided funds. When kitchen worker Robert faced harassment, Bumpy intervened with quiet authority. These weren't transactions, they were investments in human infrastructure. Hour 24. James appeared at the infirmary entrance during shift change. His approach seemed random, his presence unremarkable. He spent 2 minutes beside Bumpy's bed, appearing to adjust bedding. Their exchange consisted of whispered syllables, invisible to supervising guards. Hour 30. The machinery activated. Kitchen workers adjusted meal schedules. Porters modified cleaning routes. Laundry staff altered their processing sequences. Each action appeared routine, individual, unconnected. But together they formed a system, a network of small modifications creating specific outcomes. The prison's Italian power structure existed within an environment they didn't control, maintained by people they'd never bothered to see. Bumpy had built his army from the invisible. Now that army began to move with silent, systematic purpose. Hour 36. Vincent Callo departed the recreation yard at 4:47 p.m., following his standard route to evening meal. The Tier 3 stairwell represented his preferred path: fewer inmates, quicker transit, strategic positioning. Step 1. His boot made contact with the metal surface. The coefficient of friction had been altered. Industrial-grade grease, applied in a thin, invisible layer by Porter James during his 4:15 cleaning rotation. Step 2. Vincent's weight shifted forward. His brain registered the slip 0.3 seconds too late for corrective action. Steps 3 to 20. Gravity became Vincent's enemy. His 240-pound frame accelerated downward, each metal step delivering kinetic impact to vertebrae, ribs, skull. The sound of body meeting steel echoed through D-block with rhythmic precision. 20 distinct impacts, 20 separate traumas. Final impact. Vincent's spine struck the concrete, landing at an angle that compressed his lumbar vertebrae beyond recovery. The crack was audible from 20 feet away. Hour 37. Dr. Reinhardt performed emergency examination. His assessment was clinical, inevitable. Complete spinal cord injury, L1, L2. Permanent paralysis from the waist down. Vincent Callo, the muscle, the enforcer, the physical manifestation of Italian dominance, now lay immobile. His upper body remained functional, allowing him to feel everything his lower body could never do again. In the infirmary, Bumpy Johnson received this information through the invisible network. His expression remained neutral. 1 variable eliminated. 2 remaining. Hour 48. Sal Romano supervised laundry operations at 9:30 a.m., maintaining his territorial control over the prison's textile economy. The industrial pressing machine operated at 300 pounds of pressure per square inch, requiring precise safety protocols. 9:47 a.m. The safety release mechanism experienced mechanical failure. Porter maintenance records would later show routine inspection completed that morning, all systems functional. The records wouldn't mention James's 2-minute adjustment to the release spring tension. 9:48 a.m. Sal positioned fabric into the press. His right hand extended past the safety threshold by 3 inches, standard procedure he'd performed thousands of times. 9:48 and 17 seconds a.m. The rollers descended without warning. No alarm, no release mechanism response. 300 pounds of pressure met flesh, bone, and tendon. The sound of organic matter being compressed into paste triggered immediate evacuation of the laundry facility. Hour 52. Dr. Reinhardt extracted what remained. The hand was unsalvageable, crushed beyond surgical repair, bone fragments embedded in pulverized tissue. Hour 96. Gangrene manifested. The infection spread with bacterial efficiency, black tendrils advancing up Sal's forearm despite antibiotic intervention. Hour 120. Emergency amputation. Dr. Reinhardt saw removed Sal's arm at the shoulder, the only viable option for preventing systemic sepsis. Sal Romano, the extortionist, the laundry king, now possessed one arm. In Sing Sing's ecosystem, a one-armed man loses operational capacity, loses credibility, loses everything. 2 variables eliminated. 1 remaining. Hour 70. Tony, the Blade, Marquez sat in the commissary at 7:15 a.m., consuming his standard breakfast. Oatmeal, 2 pieces of toast, coffee. The routine hadn't varied in 4 years. 7:23 a.m. The oatmeal contained an inconsistency. Not poison, that would be too obvious, too traceable. Instead, a piece of gristle from yesterday's beef, deliberately mixed into Tony's portion by kitchen worker Robert during 6:45 food preparation. 7:23 and 34 seconds a.m. Tony swallowed. The gristle lodged in his trachea at the optimal position, not high enough for easy removal, not low enough for passage into the esophagus. 7:23 and 50 seconds a.m. Tony's hands reached for his throat. Universal sign of airway obstruction. Inmates around him registered the emergency but responded with calculated delay. Seconds accumulated. 7:24 and 15 seconds a.m. Guard Morrison reached Tony. Attempted Heimlich maneuver, improper angle. 45 seconds without oxygen. 7:25 and 30 seconds a.m. Dr. Reinhardt arrived. Emergency tracheotomy, successful airway restoration. 2 minutes 30 seconds total oxygen deprivation. 7:26 a.m. Tony's heart restarted. Cardiac function restored. But the brain had operated without oxygen beyond the threshold of cellular recovery. Hour 72. Tony's eyes opened, but nothing looked back. Cerebral hypoxia had erased the person, leaving only the biological machinery. He could breathe, process nutrients, maintain circulation. But Tony, the Blade Marquez, the made man, the authority, the executor, that entity no longer existed. 3 variables eliminated. Not through death. Through precision. Hour 168. Warden James Miller entered the infirmary at 3 p.m., 1 week after the initial stabbing. His expression carried the weight of confirmed suspicion without provable evidence. Bumpy Johnson sat upright in bed, surgical wounds healing at acceptable rates. A book rested in his hands, Introduction to Mathematical Logic by Alonzo Church. The selection was deliberate. "You destroyed 3 men," Miller stated. Not a question. An accusation delivered with certainty that couldn't reach the threshold of legal action. Bumpy's eyes lifted from the page. His voice emerged steady, each word measured. "I haven't destroyed anyone, Warden." Vincent fell downstairs. Sal experienced equipment malfunction. Tony choked on his breakfast. The incident reports document each event as accidental. Within 1 week. 3 men who stabbed you. Correlation isn't causation, Warden. That's basic statistical reasoning. Miller's jaw tightened. "You orchestrated this." Bumpy closed the book, his movement deliberate. "I didn't take their lives. Death would have been mercy. Quick, final, without contemplation. Instead, I took their capacity, their dignity, their futures. Vincent will spend decades feeling his useless legs. Sal will struggle with every basic task. Tony will exist without existing. That's crueler than killing them." "No, Warden." Bumpy's expression remained neutral, clinical. "That's mathematics. They attempted to eliminate 1 variable, me. I eliminated 3 variables, their power, their pride, their purpose. The equation balances perfectly." Miller stood silent, recognizing the elegant brutality of mathematical justice. 1947 to 1964, Tony Marquez existed in a wheelchair, wheeled through Sing Sing's corridors by rotating attendants. His body functioned, consuming, processing, excreting, but his consciousness remained absent. Inmates passing him witnessed not a person but a warning, a demonstration of what happens when you fail to finish what you start. 17 years of biological persistence without cognitive presence. 17 years of other inmates observing the vegetable that once commanded respect. In 1964, pneumonia finally terminated Tony's respiratory function. No one mourned. Most had forgotten the man he'd been. Vincent Callo remained in Sing Sing's medical wing, his upper body functional, his lower body permanently useless. He maintained consciousness. Terrible gift. Every day he felt the phantom sensations of legs that wouldn't respond, experienced the humiliation of complete dependence for basic biological functions. Other inmates stopped acknowledging him. Power doesn't recognize the powerless. Sal Romano received early release in 1949 due to medical considerations. He emerged from Sing Sing with 1 arm, no employable skills, no criminal network willing to utilize damaged goods. He died in 1953 on a Philadelphia street, 43 years old, homeless, forgotten. September 1947, Bumpy Johnson walked through Sing Sing's gates on his own 2 feet. His stride was measured, unhurried. Behind him, 3 men existed in various states of living death, permanent exhibits in his museum of consequence. The lesson was simple, mathematical, absolute. Unless you stop the heart, you haven't finished the equation. And an unfinished equation always solves itself. If this story blew your mind, here's what I need you to do right now. Smash that subscribe button because we dive into the darkest, most insane true crime stories every single week. Stories the history books don't tell you. Stories about real people who did unthinkable things. Hit the like button if you think Bumpy's revenge was justified, or if you think he went too far. I want to know what you think. Drop a comment with the wildest revenge story you've ever heard. Or tell me, what should our next story be about? Share this video with someone who loves true crime, because stories like this deserve to be told. And finally, turn on notifications so you never miss when we drop the next episode. I've got stories about prison breaks, mob wars, con artists, and criminals who changed history. But only if you subscribe. This has been Justice as Mathematics. The story of how Bumpy Johnson taught 3 men that 7 stabs isn't enough. Remember, unless you finish the equation, it will finish you. See you in the next one.